And good afternoon. You're listening to Ken Hudnall. This is the Ken Hudnall Show. Coming to you from our studios right here in exciting El Paso, Texas. Gateway to the Old West and the most haunted city in the country. Well, today is April the 9th, the 99th day of this new year. Just 266 days remain to the year's over with, and we'll start a new one. Holidays observances. National Alcohol Screening Day. International ASMR Day, National Former Prisoner of War Recognition Day, National Chinese Almond Cookie Day, and, most importantly, National Unicorn Day. Well, with that having been covered, let us see what stories we have in the news on this April the 9th. President Trump has taunted Iran, says the U.S. military is looking forward to its next conquest. President Trump has led the West to a big win against Iran. Part of the panel on special report that was Britt Bauer asked the members of the panel to assess the just announced 2-week ceasefire in the battle with Iran. They were Dasha Burns and Mark Penn and Juan Williams, demurred. Kellyanne Conway elaborated on her feeling, citing President Trump's long-established pattern of negotiation having brought about at least a temporary win. Well, the test of how big a win it might actually be will be revealed in the rest of the 2 weeks. Crucial issue is, can whoever's in Iran wrote the check, promising the Strait of Hormuz would actually open up, be able to cash it. If that's the case, the world's oil supply will surge a bit, and the remnants of the Iranian regime will have a chance to inventory the destruction that's been rained down on it in the last 5 weeks. The Ayatollah Khomeini's son, who was the new supreme leader, depending on which report you listen to, is dead or comatose or in hiding. Don't really know one way or the other. Well, the husband's been taken into custody in connection with the missing American woman last seen in the Bahamas. Stories out of Hopetown, Bahamas. Husband of an American woman went missing in the Bahamas has been arrested in connection with her disappearance. That's according to his attorney. Attorney Terrell Butler confirmed to Fox News on Thursday that the 58-year-old Brian Hooker was taken into custody on Wednesday. That's a connection with the disappearance of his wife, Lynette Hooker. He hasn't been charged in any crime yet, but he is in jail. Lynette, who's roughly 56 years old, went missing Saturday evening while traveling by boat with her husband. That's according to Bahamian officials. Reportedly fell into the water near Hopetown, was carried away with the current. That's according to Brian. Butler said Brian's been cooperating with relevant authorities and categorically and unequivocally denies any wrongdoing in Lynette's disappearance, specifically allegations about his potential involvement made by her daughter, Harley Ainsworth. Well, we'll see if they take him to trial. If so, can they prove anything? Well, a former Fort Bragg employee has been charged with leaking classified military information to a journalist. Former Fort Bragg employee with a top secret clearance, no less, is accused of leaking classified military tactics to a journalist, and admitting to her mother she could be arrested for exposing sensitive operations. That's according to a federal complaint. Courtney Williams, 40, an Army veteran assigned to a special military unit at Fort Bragg in North Carolina, was arrested by the FBI on Tuesday, charged with unlawfully transmitting national defense information, including classified tactics used in covert missions, to an investigative reporter over a period spanning several years. That's according to a allegations made by a federal prosecutor. I spent a summer at Fort Bragg. Quite an interesting place. Well, Virginia Democrat rejects the power grab claims on Spanberger. Redistricting's GOP warns 10-1 map would split the rural vote. Top Virginia Democrats defending support for the redistricting effort critics are calling a power grab on the part of Governor Abigail Spanberger and the Richmond leadership, dismissing claims that rural Virginians will have their voices diluted by an urban-centric map. Redistricting a referendum before voters through April 21st would redraw Virginia's 6-5 Democratic majority congressional map into a likely 10-1 spread, leaving underrepresented Morgan Griffin, Republican of Virginia, from the Old Dominion's mountainous far southwest, in office with the GOP. Well, if you can't win any other way, I guess that's a way to do it. But Jimmy Kimmel told the UCLA women's basketball team to give Trump fake national championship trophy. They'll give it an eyebrow-raising political quest by late-night talk show host Jimmy Kimmel. During a group interview on Jimmy Kimmel Live on Tuesday, a discussion with Lauren Betts and Kiki Rice and Gabriela Jaquez and Angela Dugalik and Coach Corey Close turned political. After Kimmel pointed out that former President Barack Obama made a social media post congratulating the team on their championship win, he asked if President Trump had reached out yet. Player said no in response to Kimmel's Trump question. So he didn't turn the conversation into anti-Trump, his favorite anti-Trump routine. He said, "I'm sure you know he's busy. He's in 2 weeks, you'll hear from him," Kimmel said. "In the event that you do get invited to the White House, decide to go, I've got something for you." Then he pulled out a silver trophy that hardly resembled the NCAA championship trophy that sat on his desk. He said, "I want you to bring this fake trophy we've made to the White House." He's not going to know the difference, but when you bring a trophy, he sometimes takes it and keeps it for himself. So this is for you guys to take to the White House. Well, Kimmel's going to keep pushing. He's going to wind up just like a number of the others. Well, Christina Hack and Heather Ray El Musa turned heads in bikinis during a glam desert family getaway. They're redefining co-parenting goals one desert pool day at a time. Stars of the flip-off took to social media this week to share a glimpse into their latest blended family excursion. Posing poolside against the backdrop of desert mountains, Hack and Heather Ray showcased their vacation style alongside Tariq El Musa and Hack's boyfriend, Christopher Aroka. Hack opted for a vibrant yellow triangle bikini paired with a matching mesh sarong and a tan cowboy hat. Heather Ray modeled a textured pastel pink bandeau bikini featuring a gold shell detail and a coordinating pink wrap. Well, Christina's come a long way since I first saw her on TV with her husband at that time, El Musa. Well, Florida bus driver is facing child neglect charges after a train clips the vehicle on railroad tracks. Bus driver's been charged with nearly 30 counts of child neglect as well as reckless driving after she narrowly avoided catastrophe and was clipped by a train last week. Nobody was injured on the bus transporting children in the Sumter County School District, but it was clipped by the CSX train with 29 students and one aide on board. The driver, Yvonne Hampton, had been employed by the district since 2015, according to Sumter County Superintendent Logan Brown. He posted a video about the incident on Facebook on April the 6th. Driver stepped down and placed a termination, according to Fox 35 Orlando. "Trust our families place in us to transport their children safely is something we take extremely seriously," Brown said in a statement. Anybody that jeopardizes that trust will not work in the Sumter County School District. Well, sitting on a school bus watching a train coming at you has got to be somewhat disconcerting. What is an interesting story I've been following? A missing teen case is flipped as the kidnapped girl's been found alive. She built a secret life as a mother of 3, according to investigators. This Arizona girl vanished at 13, is long feared abducted, has been found alive, now living a quiet life as a married mother of 3, working for a private investigators company, according to a report. Tina Marie Plant, now 45, is living in Springfield, Missouri, more than 1,000 miles from where she disappeared in 1994. She's built a new life after leaving home as a teenager. The outlet reported Plant married as a teen, raised 3 sons, and later earned a psychology degree from Missouri State University. Now works in a supervisory role for a Springfield-based firm that investigates insurance fraud, according to Daily Mail. Shares a 5-bedroom house with her husband of nearly 3 decades, Sean Holland, software engineering manager. Let's see. Democratic lawmaker is calling for the TSA to bring back a shoes-off airport security policy. Senator Tammy Duckworth, Democrat of Illinois, is demanding that TSA reintroduce its controversial policy requiring travelers to take off their shoes before going through airport security. She called on the TSA to immediately reverse its move to end the shoes-off policy, calling former Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem's decision last summer to scrap that policy a reckless act that may put travelers at risk. Secretary Noem's decision to implement a shoes-on policy on July 8, 2025, likely without meaningful consultation with TSA, was a reckless act, she wrote in a letter to acting TSA Administrator Nguyen McNeil, allowing a potentially catastrophic security deficiency to remain in place for 7 months and counting betrays TSA's mission, she said. Well, the interesting thing is these elected officials become automatic experts in anything they turn their hand to. Don't make any difference to know what they're talking about or not. I've not seen anything taking your shoes off to go through the security checkpoint accomplishes other than annoying the travelers. Son of former top Iranian officials now seen living a comfortable lifestyle in Los Angeles. The son of the former top-level Iranian official acted as a spokesperson for hostage takers occupying Tehran's U.S. embassy in 1979. Another relative of Iran's hardline Islamist regime caught living a comfortable and affluent Western lifestyle in Los Angeles. Yes, we're the great Satan, but they all want to live here. Petitioners have been calling for Issa Hashimi, 43, to be investigated and deported, arguing it's unfair for relatives of Iranian leaders to enjoy the freedom and privileges afforded to people in the West, and more particularly in the U.S., while their government in Iran continues to oppress and restrict its people from exercising rights seen as basic rights within America. And, of course, every one of them is doing quite well financially. Paulina Poroskova says modeling taught her to do as you're told, including taking off her clothes. From her childhood with a hard-to-please mother to her youthful modeling days, said she felt trained to do as she was told to do, even when it meant taking her top off. Said when she began modeling at 15, it was just the same story all over again. She's a former supermodel. She was talking about feeling like she had to put on a show to please her single mother who paid little attention to her as a child. Quickest way to get out of a situation was to do as you're told, she said on the 20 Good Summers podcast with her fiancé, Jeff Greenstein. If that meant taking my top off, and if that meant doing X, Y, and Z as well, I just did that because that was the easiest way to get through it and also to please people. She explained that being in love for who you are is something that escaped her till she was 58 years old. There's a lot of strange people in the world. Charlie's Angels star Kate Jackson says fame destroyed her privacy and forced her out of Hollywood. Of course, she took her money with her when she left. She said fame came at a steep cost, and it's one she still hadn't embraced decades later. Former TV star said constant scrutiny stripped away her privacy early on. The trade-off, they later pushed her to retreat from Hollywood. She said, we lost our privacy totally, she told People magazine at the 50th anniversary celebration of Charlie's Angels. We just absolutely, totally lost every bit of privacy, and to make it worse, those horrible tabloids. Well, the Charlie's Angels alumni didn't mince words as he reflected on modern culture and her disconnect from social media. She said, I don't understand social media. Excuse me. She said, I don't get it. All I want is a little privacy, and I don't understand why people's fine taking their picture and telling the world where they are at this very moment doing this thing. I don't get it. Jax is now 77. Got her start on Dark Shadows before cementing herself as a household name with her performance as Sabrina Duncan on Charlie's Angels. Later solidified her TV legacy with roles in The Scarecrow and Mrs. King. I used to watch Dark Shadows, and I don't remember her being on it, but then again, that was, good Lord, 60 years ago. Masters fans are cheering low prices as Augusta National concessions feel unreal with $1.50 sandwiches. As prices soar across stadiums and arenas nationwide, Augusta National, home of the Masters golf tournament, once again standing out for its low prices. Famed golf club in Augusta, Georgia went viral on social media after journalist Claire Rogers shared a photo of its concession menu during the Augusta National Women's Amateur. Rogers' post, shared March 31st, highlighted food prices remained low in 2026. The stand offered sandwiches ranging from $1.50 to $3, including egg salad and pimento cheese at the low end, and club and ham and cheese options at $3. Muffins are priced at $2.50. Cookies and chips are sold for $1.50. I haven't seen prices like that in many moons. Well, Prince Harry, Meghan Markle, caused unforgivable stress for Queen Elizabeth in her final years, according to an author. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle reportedly caused unforgivable stress for Queen Elizabeth II. That claim was made by royal biographer Hugo Vickers, who has written a new book called Queen Elizabeth II, A Personal History. It explores the late monarch's triumphs and personal challenges based on sources close to the palace. Fox News reached out to Archewell, which handles the offices of the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, Buckingham Palace, for comment. Spokesperson for Buckingham Palace previously told Fox News Digital, we don't comment on such books. Well, Meghan Markle thought she was going to kind of be the second queen since she was a star, don't you know? Didn't quite work out that way. Well, President Trump trashed Marjorie Taylor Greene after Republican wins the contest to fill her old seat despite the stench left by Greene. President Trump blasted former Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene on Wednesday after Republican Clay Fuller won the special election runoff on Tuesday to fill Greene's old seat in Georgia's 14th Congressional District. Marjorie Trader Browns, he said Greene turns brown under stress. A seat in Congress has been taken over by a wonderful and talented man, Clay Fuller, who won convincingly and right from the beginning, despite many people running for that Trump plus 37 seat. And despite the stench left by Greene, Trump declared in a Wednesday Truth Social post. Congratulations to Clay Fuller, a very large improvement over his deranged predecessor. Well, it's interesting to see that President Trump still keeping a sense of humor. Well, Paulina Gretzky has returned to the Masters Par 3 contest. She's caddying for Dustin Johnson. She's the daughter of NHL legend Wayne Gretzky and the wife of LIV golf star Dustin Johnson. At the Masters Par 3 contest, caddying for her husband on Wednesday. The Masters Par 3 contest is the event that takes place before the Masters tees off. One of the lighthearted events of the week is golfers are able to test whether they can get some aces on specific holes at Augusta National. It's a fun event meant for the entire family. Bryson DeChambeau adds 3D printed clubs to his bag for the Masters. I've even seen stories about 3D printed houses. So that seems to be a new era. Ryan DeChambeau's putting together a solid season at the LIV Golf, looking to carry some of that momentum into the Masters this week in search of the first green jacket of his career. He's second in the LIV Golf standings behind John Rahm, but he enters the Augusta National with back-to-back wins in Singapore and South Africa. And as he heads into the first major of the golf season, he's carrying something new in his bag. He'll use a 5-iron made with a 3D printer. It's a club he built himself. He said, there's this nature I have about myself where innovation's a habit of mine. Really find and take pride in that ability to learn, even through failure, even though making a bad decision or a good decision, that I can get from that. We'll see where it goes. We'll see where it takes me. All I can say now is if I don't put it in the bag, it's my fault now. Well, we'll see how all that plays out. Iran has threatened to end the ceasefire over Hezbollah's exclusion from the truce deal. Lack of a 2-week pause in the fighting between Israel and Hezbollah appears to be a deal breaker for Iran's regime as the ceasefire takes effect. While the Trump administration maintains the deal doesn't include the Tehran-backed terrorist movement Hezbollah, Iran's threatening to use that exclusion as a pressure point against the U.S., potentially collapsing the entire ceasefire. On Wednesday, Iran's foreign minister, Sayed Abbas Araghchi, wrote on X that the Iran-U.S. ceasefire terms are clear and explicit. The U.S. has to choose ceasefire or continued war via Israel. It can't have both. The world sees the massacres in Lebanon. The ball's in the U.S. court, and the world's watching whether it'll act on its commitments. Well, Spanberger's been ripped after taking credit for billions in investments secured under the GOP predecessor. Virginia's Democratic Governor Abigail Spanberger took credit for billions in economic achievements secured under her GOP predecessor, earning her backlash from Republican leaders and the representatives running the state before she got there. She touted signing legislation to authorize 4 separate investments from the aerospace, energy, and pharmaceutical industries earlier this week. The investments, according to a press release in Spanberger's office, would welcome 3,250 new jobs and $7.1 billion in business investment to the state. She said, from my very first day in office, I've been working to create a stable business environment so companies can hire and expand and continue to invest in our Commonwealth. I'm signing these bills into law so we continue to grow Virginia's economy and create opportunities for Virginians. But her signature was just a formality, as the details she touted were part of a Youngkin's broader push to spur economic development as governor of Virginia, which included a record of $156 billion in total CEO commitments during his term. As he was exiting office, the former GOP governor garnered more than the previous 6 gubernatorial administrations combined, according to a press release from Youngkin's team. But Spanberger was quick to claim credit for it. Well, deadly bacterial disease could be stopped with common pantry staple, according to a new study. Cholera can quickly become life-threatening, but the best defense might be sitting in your pantry. New research from UC Riverside in Southern California reveals that a high-protein diet can effectively disarm the bacteria, slash infection levels by 100-fold, and stop the disease in its tracks before it turns fatal. Published in the journal Cell Host and Microbe, the study found that diets rich in casein, the main protein in milk and cheese, along with wheat gluten, would limit cholera bacteria in the gut. Cholera is a bacterial disease spread through contaminated water and food, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. And that disease can cause severe diarrhea, dehydration, and even death if it goes untreated. Well, Well, NASA's lunar triumph exposes how Biden's woke madness mandates nearly derailed Artemis. According to Senator Rick Scott, Artemis taught us a lesson: purge woke politics and let NASA do its job. This week, Americans and people around the world have been awed and inspired by an incredible journey began in Florida. After a successful launch at Cape Canaveral, NASA has sent human beings around the moon for the first time in 54 years. Artemis 2 has now completed its lunar flyby, traveled more than 250,000 miles from Earth, and venturing further into space than any crewed mission in modern history. And according to NASA, as exciting as this mission is, it's only the beginning of America's new future in the final frontier. None of it would be possible without sound leadership. Touting the leadership of President Trump, NASA's administrator, Jared Isaacman. Artemis 3 is expected to launch next year, entering low Earth orbit to rendezvous with one or both commercial lunar landers before landing Americans on the moon in 2028. Well, we're going to turn from the news to our story for today. Yesterday we started talking about cryptids. Cryptozoology has always, to me, been a fascinating area of study. Well, now what is wrong with there we go. And we started talking about some of the lesser-known cryptids yesterday, such as the okapi, also known as the African unicorn, was once a creature of mystery and legend. Once in 1901, Sir Harry Johnston discovered this elusive animal and sent its skeleton and skin to the British Museum. This find led to the okapi being officially classified as a brand new species. Then in 1917, two young girls, Elsie Wright and Frances Griffith, produced photographs of fairies said to be taken in a wooded area near Cottingley, England. Photo caused a worldwide sensation. A lot of people started believing in their existence. But in 1980, Elsie Wright admitted that there were photos that she and her friend had taken that were a hoax, created using cardboard cutouts and careful lighting. And then in 1869, a giant petrified man was found in Cardiff, New York, drawing crowds eager to see the supposed relic from the prehistoric era. Eventually, it was revealed the giant was actually a card block of Jimson, created as a hoax by a group of businessmen. Then we got the axolotl, a unique amphibian, feathery gills and wide eyes once led people to believe it was a mythical creature. But scientists eventually discovered it was a real species of salamander native to Mexico in 1787. Then you've got the wombat, a marsupial with a stout body and short, blunt snout, baffled early European settlers in Australia. Initially, it was thought to be a hoax or a mythical creature. But in 1808, George Shaw, British zoologist, officially recognized and scientifically described the wombat. Then we got the saola, one of the rarest mammals on Earth. It remains a mystery to scientists who know very little about its biology and behavior. It's a type of antelope, one discovered until 1992 in Vietnam. And let me say one thing about the jungle environment. It has more mysteries than a dozen scientists could classify. I know I spent my time running through the jungles of South America. Saw a lot of strange things. And the mountain gorilla was first documented by Western scientists in 1902. Before that, it existed only in local folklore and through unverified sightings. And people knew about the giant panda only through its fur and bones before the 19th century, frequently depicted in Chinese art and mythology as a mystical creature. Giant panda was first scientifically described in 1869 by French missionary Armand David. Then Solenodon, a creature with a venomous bite was once thought to be a mythical creature. Its unusual appearance with a long pointed snout and venomous saliva made that seem to me like something out of a fantasy story. And then it was discovered in 1833. And then we have what's been known as the gentle giant of the waterways, the manatee. Once mistaken for a mythical mermaid, rounded body and flipper-like arms of the manatee make it easy to see why sailors might have been fooled. Well, some cryptids are enthusiastically sought after. Even Sir Edmund Hillary, mountaineer and explorer, indulged in discussions of cryptids. One of his favorites seemed to be the Yeti. Now, hailed as the Big Five of cryptozoology, enthusiasts and researchers considered these legendary creatures to be the ultimate discoveries, should they ever be found. Mysterious and elusive, they've captivated the imagination of people around the world. From the depths of the ocean to the remotest wilderness, these beings continue to intrigue people. First and foremost on this hit parade is Bigfoot, the legend of the Sasquatch. It's known as Sasquatch by the indigenous tribes in North America. It's one of the most enduring cryptids in North American folklore. And over time, tales of this wild creature have evolved from ancient legend into a cultural phenomena. Now, the name Sasquatch originates from the Salish word Sasquatch, which translates to wild man or hairy man. The Salish people are indigenous tribes who inhabit the coastal regions of the Pacific Northwest. The native tribes across this region have passed down stories of a large hairy being roaming the forest. And this creature, often seen as a protector of the land, was sometimes friendly, sometimes fierce, but always shrouded in mystery. When European settlers arrived in North America, they added their own interpretation of these stories. In the 19th century, a lot of settlers reported encounters with strange ape-like figures. And for settlers facing a vast, untamed landscape filled with unknown animals, the idea of a wild man was just another thrilling puzzle to be solved. Eyewitness reports described enormous, man-like creatures leaving human-sized footprints in the mud. These beings had an unsettling habit of watching people from a distance. Early accounts played a significant role in shaping the Bigfoot legend we recognize today. And over the years, countless sightings have contributed to the allure of Bigfoot. Some encounters have become legendary, solidifying Bigfoot's status as a cultural icon. One of the most famous encounters took place in 1811. The individual involved was named David Thompson, a seasoned fur trader and explorer. He found himself navigating the rugged wilderness near what's now Jasper, Alberta, Canada. He's no stranger to solitude or the harsh Canadian Rockies. Even his hardy disposition was tested as he trudged through the snow in search of viable trading routes. With nothing more than his wits and determination, he was on a mission to map uncharted territory. It was during one of these snow-laden treks he stumbled upon an extraordinary set of footprints. These weren't the prints of usual suspects like wolves or bears, which Thompson had experienced in identifying. These tracks are actually enormous, measuring 14 inches in length, with a stride far wider than any known animal in the area. They were humanoid but distinctly alien, pressed deep into the pristine snow, defying the natural order, so to speak. Thompson was a rational man, chalked him up to the possibility of a wandering bear with oddly positioned feet. But as he followed the tracks, their symmetry and human-like shape resisted such a straightforward explanation. The size and depth suggested a creature of immense size and power. In all his time exploring the wild, he'd encountered nothing like it. The sheer improbability of the tracks must have given him pause. You can imagine he didn't dwell too long on philosophical musings. After all, the Rockies are no place for dawdling and wool gathering. Even though Thompson never saw the creature himself, he recorded the footprints in his journal. And as a scientist and a pragmatist, he was not inclined to flights of fancy, lending credibility to his observations. His journal entry, written in an understated style, didn't embellish or speculate, but left a mystery tantalizingly unresolved. That account, though it made no explicit claims about Bigfoot, became the earliest known record of its discovery. Well, whether Thompson slept that night with one eye open or dismissed the encounter as an oddity best forgotten will remain a mystery. Scholars have debated his discovery for over 200 years. Some argue the tracks were the result of a peculiar bear or melting snow distorting their shape. Others insist they were the first tangible proof of something extraordinary. Then, in 1924, a group of 5 gold prospectors ventured into the remote wilderness of Washington state. They were seeking their fortune in the volcanic shadow of Mount St. Helens. Little did they know they were about to stumble on a tale that would etch itself into the annals of cryptid lore. Their camp, which was perched on a cliff overlooking the rugged gorge that later be named Ape Canyon, became the unlikely stage for an encounter with something they could neither explain nor escape. Now, the trouble began innocuously enough as the men worked to extract gold from a nearby creek. One day, while scouting the area, one prospector named Fred Beck reported seeing an enormous ape-like creature standing among the trees. Later descriptions painted a picture of a hulking figure covered in dark hair, walking upright in a manner far too human for comfort. Beck claimed the creature stared at him with a mixture of interest and menace before retreating into the forest. Naturally, he shared his sighting with the rest of the group, but they dismissed it as the product of fatigue or an overactive imagination. Next evening, the tone shifted dramatically. As the men prepared their evening meal, a barrage of rocks began raining down on their cabin. At first, they thought it was a work of mischievous locals, but the sheer size of the stones and the terrifying gruntle sounds echoing from the woods convinced them otherwise. Trapped inside their makeshift shelter, they clutched their guns and lamps tightly and hoped for the best. The assaults intensified throughout the night, and these creatures, and there were more than one, according to descriptions, pounded on the walls and the roof, and their howls mingled with the sound of splitting wood. In Beck's opinion, the noise was deafening, as though the forest itself had become alive with anger. From their position inside the cabin, the men caught glimpses of large, shadowy figures moving outside just beyond the firelight. At one point, the door buckled under the force of what must have been a powerful shoulder or fist, even though it held firm. One prospector swore he saw a massive hand reach through a gap in the wall, its fingers groping for anything it could grasp. Whether this detail was true or a product of fear-filled imagination remains unclear, but it did add to the group's growing panic. By dawn, the attacks had ceased, leaving an eerie silence. When the sun rose high enough to banish the shadows, the sleep-deprived men cautiously emerged, their nerves frayed. And around the cabin, they found a scene of chaos. Large stones and boulders littered the area, some embedded in the ground from the force of their impact. And massive footprints surrounded the clearing, each imprint far larger than that of a human. Well, the men decided at that point to abandon their claim and retreat back to civilization. Their descent from Ape Canyon was a chaotic scramble, glances darting nervously behind them, rifles clutched in a show of courage. Once they got to safety, they recounted their terrifying story. Some listeners dismissed it as pure fantasy, others laughed outright. The men didn't join in the laughter, they just learned that what shirt tails were for, covering up the evidence of their sheer panic. Years later, Fred Beck remained adamant that what they encountered was real. He described the creatures as aggressive and intelligent. Critics speculated that the entire episode was either a hoax or a case of overactive imagination brought on by isolation. Others suggested it was a group of rowdy locals playing an elaborate prank. Whatever the truth might be, the story of Ape Canyon endures as one of the most vividly documented encounters with what we now call Bigfoot. While some question its veracity, there's no doubt the prospectors felt genuine fear. Then we got a story from 1924 that talks about an abduction. Albert Ostman claimed to be abducted by Bigfoot. It's a gripping account that has all the elements of a cryptid story masterpiece. Set against the untamed wilderness of British Columbia in 1924, unfolds in a place where nature reigns supreme, and mysteries linger just beyond the firelight. Ostman, like many men of his time, ventured into the remote forest, lured by the promise of gold. One fateful night, his life took a bizarre turn. As he settled into a sleeping bag after a long day of prospecting, he was awakened to find himself being carried away. Still wrapped up in his sleeping bag, he was literally picked up and transported to the forest. After what felt like an eternity being jostled through the darkness, he was deposited in the midst of what he described as the Bigfoot family's camp. He was kidnapped by not one, but an entire family of Sasquatches living deep in the mountains. His story described a family of 4, a large male, possibly the one that captured him, a female, and 2 younger Bigfoots who eyed him with curiosity. And over the days that followed, Osmond studied their behavior, noting remarkable details about each member. The male was imposing, exuding authority with an air of cautious hospitality. The female appeared calm, carrying out daily activities while casting inquisitive glances at their unexpected guest. Surprisingly enough, according to Osmond, the family showed no aggression. Despite their efficient reputation, they treated Osmond with what could only be described as politeness. Spent his time observing them, learning about their gestures and their grunts. They were clearly communicating with each other. And while they foraged food, Osmond made do with whatever he could find. Now, of course, the thought of escape was never far from his mind. And though the Bigfoot family seemed welcome, he had no intention of becoming a permanent resident in their mountain abode. So he had a plan. He also had coffee. Osmond tricked the male Sasquatch into trying his ground coffee. Osmond escaped when the creature reacted badly to it, creating a caffeine-induced diversion. It gave Osmond enough time to make a run for it. Upon returning to civilization, Osmond's tale made a peculiar but enduring chapter in the Bigfoot story. While some found his encounter intriguing because of its detail and consistency, others dismissed it as a prospector's imaginative yarn. But until his dying day, he stood by his story, insisting his days as a captive of the Sasquatches were all too real. Then we got a story from 1955. The setting was British Columbia. A dense forest on a quiet day. William Rowe explored the wilderness as any adventurous soul might. It was on this fateful day he encountered what many dream of, but few can claim. He had a direct, detailed sighting of a female Sasquatch. No fleeting shadow, a distant figure obscured by foliage. Standing in front of him was a creature about 6 feet tall, and his body clothed in thick, dark brown hair. The fur was softer and denser than one might expect from a bear. And her face, a striking blend of human-like features and something primal, left a lasting impression. Rowe's observation captured every nuance of the encounter. Her hands and feet, broad and sturdy, bore traits of both human and animal, strong like those of a seasoned laborer but devoid of claws. As she moved gracefully through the forest, Rowe noted the powerful ripple of muscles beneath her fur, evidence of a physique perfectly suited to the rugged and unforgiving landscape. And then there were her eyes, deep-set and penetrating, their intelligent gaze, calm but curious, taking in everything around her. Silent connection passed between Rowe and the creature. Felt timeless. It was not a confrontation marked by fear or aggression, but rather an exchange of mutual interest and respect. The encounter ended as suddenly as it began. With purposeful strides, she turned and disappeared into the forest. There was no urgency in her retreat. It was as though she was resuming her place in the natural world, leaving Rowe to reflect on the extraordinary event. William Rowe's Bigfoot account is still one of the best and most detailed stories about the creature. Despite the skepticism it's faced, Rowe never wavered in his retelling of that day. He simply told his story, a story that continues to captivate. Then, of course, among the most famous encounters was 1967, the Patterson-Gimlin film. It remains a legendary piece of footage that has fascinated audiences for decades. It captures the moment when 2 men, Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin, stumbled upon an elusive creature in the rugged, misty forest of Bluff Creek in Northern California. The atmosphere is thick with suspense as their 16-millimeter camera begins to roll. And then she appears. The infamous creature that was dubbed Patty by Bigfoot enthusiasts. With a stride that seemed casual but unmistakably deliberate, she moves along the creek bed, exuding a presence that sets her apart from any known creature. Her massive frame, the way she glances over her shoulder, and her unhurried movements all convey an aura of quiet confidence. What captivates viewers, though, is not only her imposing appearance, but the lifelike quality of her movements. Covered head to toe in dark fur, her arms swing in a manner uncharacteristic of humans. Time seemed to stand still as she turns her head, meeting the gaze of the camera. And for skeptics, it's an elaborate hoax. For believers, it's a monumental moment, proof that such a creature might exist. What makes the footage so compelling is the detail. Patty's muscles shift beneath her fur as she walks, a feature that would have been extraordinarily difficult to replicate with the technology available at the time. The texture and fluid motion of her fur further contribute to the authenticity. And despite numerous attempts over the years to debunk the film, nobody's recreated it in a way that convincingly matches the original. Critics argue that Patterson and Gimlin may have staged the entire encounter, but this theory raises its own set of questions. How could they have executed such an elaborate hoax in 1967 without modern special effects or somebody exposing the ruse over the decades? Over 50 years later, Patty's deliberate stride through the clearing continues to spark debate. And why has nobody been able to definitively prove or disprove the authenticity of that footage? Maybe it's because Patty does exist, living in the solitude of the forest, remaining indifferent to human curiosity. Then we got one from 2001. It's known as the Marble Mountain Bigfoot. While hiking in the Marble Mountains of Northern California in June of 2001, a youth group unexpectedly ran into something very strange. Led by Jim Mills, the group adventured into the lush forest for a weekend of outdoor exploration. Little did they know their journey would yield one of the most striking pieces of Bigfoot evidence to date. While setting up camp, the group noticed an unusual figure moving along a distant ridgeline. Appeared to be a lone hiker and maybe a trick of the light. But as the movement of the figure came closer, it was evident this was no ordinary passerby. It was tall, broad-shouldered, and moved with a gait that suggested remarkable size and strength. Prepared with his camera, Mills managed to capture a rare 7-minute video of the creature. The footage showed the figure moving along the ridge, briefly disappearing into the trees before reemerging. And unlike other encounters, this was not a dramatic chase or a confrontation. Instead, the group observed the figure from afar, awestruck by its deliberate, fluid motion. Cryptozoologists and skeptics have since pored over the extended footage. Some argue the proportions and stride suggest a non-human entity. But skeptics are going to continue to downplay anything that doesn't meet with their view of what the world should be. But let's go to 2012 and the Provo Canyon sighting. More modern encounter. It's become one of the most debated entities in Bigfoot lore. A group hiking in Utah encountered the elusive creature, even captured a moment on video. And this footage, though brief and grainy, sparked considerable intrigue. On the day the footage was taken, the group was trekking through the dense forest of Provo Canyon when they noticed movement ahead. Initially dismissing it as a bear or some other animal, they moved closer, recording the scene as their inquisitiveness got the better of them. Through the camera lens, they observed a tall, dark figure hunched in the underbrush. Silhouette's unmistakably humanoid, but its sheer size and shaggy appearance distinguished it from any casual hiker. Figure straightened up, revealing a height and stature that stunned the group, looked directly at him, directly at the camera, prompting a moment of paralyzing uncertainty. Deciding to retreat was the wisest option. The hikers fled, their panicked breathing and shaky camera work vividly documenting their escape. The critics of that footage suggest it could have been somebody in a costume, though why anybody would roam Provo Canyon dressed as Bigfoot remains unclear. Others pointed to the movements and proportions of the creature, arguing that it was too natural for a hoax. Despite the skepticism, the sighting remains an intriguing enigma in modern Bigfoot history. Scientists typically explain Bigfoot sightings as cases of mistaken identity and hallucinations or outlined hoaxes. Still, enthusiasts present other intriguing evidence that keeps the debate from fizzling out entirely. Large, detailed Bigfoot footprints are the best physical evidence we have. Enthusiasts argue that such details will be difficult to fake, though skeptics frequently reference the Ray Wallace debacle. For every print that appears convincing, there's always a hoax lurking in the shadows, casting doubt over the entire pursuit. Some footprints display dermal ridges, the lines and patterns found on the skin of fingers and toes. Proponents contend these ridges are hard to fabricate and lends credence to their authenticity. However, skeptics counter that the presence of dermal ridges alone is not conclusive proof, as skilled hoaxers could still replicate them. Other footprints exhibit a feature known as the tarsal break, which allows the foot to bend in the middle. While modern humans don't have this ability, some primates do. This has led researchers to propose that Bigfoot might be a primate species with a unique foot structure. DNA evidence is another battleground for believers and skeptics. Over the years, scientists have analyzed hair samples and scat and other peculiar findings. Most results, unfortunately, have been underwhelming, revealing known animals, human contamination, or just outright fraud. However, a few have returned inconclusive results, which in scientific terms is akin to shrugging and saying we don't have the foggiest idea. Believers naturally seize on these findings with the enthusiasm of tabloid journalists. Then there are audio recordings, unnerving howls and screams captured in the wilderness that sound like something out of a horror film. Bigfoot enthusiasts report distinctive whoops and knocks and other vocalizations attributed to the creature. Audio experts use spectrographic analysis to study the frequency and structure of these sounds. Some recordings exhibit unusual patterns that don't match known animal calls. And to some, these unearthed vocalizations hint at the presence of a creature yet to be classified. To others, they result from the wind or wildlife. Bigfoot recordings lack a clear source, making them puzzling but not definitive evidence. So at the end of the day, the question becomes, does Bigfoot exist? Some say yes, others no. For most people, the answer doesn't really matter. After all, the legend of Bigfoot ain't going anywhere. And equally as famous as Bigfoot is Nessie, the Loch Ness Monster, Scotland's deepwater mystery. Well, the Loch Ness Monster is arguably the most famous aquatic cryptid in the world. Loch Ness is a lake in the Scottish Highlands, been a mystery for hundreds of years. Spanning 22 miles in length and plunging over 700 feet deep, the dark, foreboding waters of the loch offered ample room for something mysterious to exist. And the nature of that something remains elusive, with no consensus of its identity. Even dating back as far as the 6th century, records of a creature in Loch Ness have been documented. In the Life of Columba, written by Saint Hudnall, there's an account of an encounter between Saint Columba and a water beast in the river Ness. Hudnall, a key figure in early medieval times, wrote about Columba and his group encountering a water beast. The account says Columba ordered the creature to retreat, and surprisingly it obeyed him. Whether this tale is genuine or a product of medieval fantasy is still debatable, but it planted the seed of a legend. So we move fast forward to the 20th century, and the tale of Nessie's evolved from local folklore to a global sensation. Maybe the most famous image in the history of cryptozoology is the so-called surgeon's photograph. It appeared in 1934. Black and white shot appeared to show a long neck and a small head emerging from the water. Captured by a man who claimed to be a surgeon. Though his credentials were somewhat dubious at best, the image was hailed as solid proof of the existence of Nessie. However, the authenticity of the photo was full of holes as a ghost story told around a campfire. In 1994, it was revealed to be a hoax. Toy submarine with an attached head. By then, though, the legend had become firmly established. Fascination in with photographs. Scientists have searched for the Loch Ness Monster using underwater surveys. Sonar readings have detected large, unexplained objects moving deep beneath the surface. The behavior is said to be too peculiar for fish or sunken boats. These discoveries have never yielded conclusive evidence. Sightings persist nonetheless. Since 1934, countless people have seen something unusual in the water. Descriptions vary widely. Some report a creature with a long serpentine neck and humps rising out of the water. Others described a large, rounded shape gliding beneath the surface. Occasionally, accounts verge on the absurd, such as a woman in the 1960s who described Nessie as having a head like a dragon and a body like an elephant. While this wasn't particularly helpful, such descriptions highlight how vivid imagination can flourish in a place like Loch Ness. What is remarkable about these sightings is their consistency. Despite the complete lack of concrete evidence, the scientific community dismisses these claims in the absence of hard data. They suggest simpler explanations such as misidentifying seals, otters, or large fish. Even natural phenomena like waves or floating logs can appear mystifying from certain angles. While popular, the theory that Nessie is a surviving plesiosaur lacks evidence. The cold water Loch Ness makes plesiosaur survival unlikely, according to scientists, because they were cold-blooded creatures. Still, imagining them lurking below the surface is undeniably more entertaining. Status of Nessie as a cultural icon can't be overstated. That creature so ingrained in Scottish identity, even if it was proven to be nothing more than an oversized fish, Nessie would still be celebrated by tourists who flock to the loch every year, hoping to catch a glimpse of the elusive beast. Tourism in the area has flourished, driven almost entirely by the legend. Loch Ness has become synonymous with mystery and adventure and overpriced souvenirs. The region has capitalized on its cryptid fame, selling everything from Nessie-shaped key rings to Nessie-approved whiskey. This commercialization shows no sign of slowing down either. Loch Ness Monster remains famous thanks to books and films and TV shows. Visitors even venture out on Nessie-themed boat tours, a delightful way to spend an afternoon. But those expecting a giant sea monster to leap out of the water may leave disappointed. Still, as with most things in life, people pay more for the idea of things rather than the reality. The allure of an undiscovered creature lurking in the depths adds undeniable charm to the experience. For now, though, the mystery continues to captivate our imagination, remaining as elusive, as intriguing as it was in Columbus' time, with no closer resolution in sight. Well, we've talked about Bigfoot, we've talked about the Loch Ness Monster. Now let's talk about the abominable snowman, the Yeti. Western circles, the Yeti is commonly referred to as the abominable snowman, described as a bipedal, ape-like creature with fur as white as the snowfields it's said to inhabit. The Yeti has captured imaginations worldwide. Among Himalayan communities, though, this Yeti holds a much deeper significance. The Sherpa people who spent lifetimes navigating the icy passes of Nepal refer to the Yeti as the Damati of the Meto Kengmi, translated roughly as man-bear snowman. In their lore, the creature is both protector and predator. Some stories depict the Yeti as the guardian of the forest, ensuring balance in the natural world. Others described it as a territorial and dangerous creature best avoided. Ask a Sherpa elder whether the Yeti exists, and you get a shy smile or a serious nod, but rarely a straight answer. Such ambiguity, after all, is actually part of the magic. On that note, we come to the end of today's show. We'll be back tomorrow to talk about more things from the shadows. Until then, this is Ken Hudnall for the Ken Hudnall Show, saying have a truly great evening.